Paul's second letter to the Corinthians was written shortly after his first letter. The Christians in Corinth were looking forward to a visit from Paul, but his plans had changed and he sent Titus there in his place. Titus reported back to Paul and company with some good news and some bad news from the Corinthian church. Paul wrote this very personal follow-up letter to the Corinthians to defend against some critics, with an occasional touch of sarcasm, to encourage these new Christians, to warn against false teachers, and to give praise to God. Paul's ministry was on fire up north, so he delayed his trip to the southern Greek city of Corinth. Even though he'd been there 2 times already, the Corinthians felt snubbed by Paul, so he sent Titus in his place to greet and encourage them. Titus told Paul that his critics in town were accusing Paul of being heavy-handed and weak, harsh and timid, arrogant and overly humble, greedy and cheap. How does that work? Paul put out those fires by listing his credentials as an apostle chosen by God, while at the same time humbling himself. Not bad. He listed his resume of trials and difficulties he had gone through, but in his weakness, God shows his strength. Titus reported that while the Corinthians weren't perfect, they were growing and improving. In one specific case where a sinner had repented, Paul told them that they shouldn't tolerate immorality in the church, but when someone repents, forgive them and welcome them back. Paul's previous letter had been harsh but effective. It was intended to build them up, not tear them down, and that's what it did. Paul told them they were ambassadors who represented God, that God is a treasure inside us who are just jars of clay intended to show the flood of God's glory. Paul almost gives us a quick glimpse into heaven and tells us to beware of false prophets and says that this life is temporary, we're just passing through. He talks about giving. He says you don't have to, but if you do, you'll be blessed because God loves a cheerful giver, and he never even mentions tax deductions.